6 to 12 months is enough time to completely change your life. Now, I know you've heard this 1,000 times from all these 18-year-old life coaches, but it's entirely possible to build a new body, make new leaps in business, change your current situation, just about anything you desire. And it all comes down to fixing the root issues of your health. I've seen this done countless times with my clients, often in 6 months or less. And I've also done this multiple times for myself. So in this video, I'm going to break down the exact system I would follow if I wanted to go from feeling stagnant with my body, my health, and my overall life, to building a body that gives you more time without having to spend your life slaving away with your training and work, fixing these underlying problems that cause you to sabotage yourself over and over, and how this time in 6 months you can be completely unrecognizable. Now, this isn't some woo-woo spiritual guidance or manifestation. This is very much the exact scientific steps you need to take with your body and your lifestyle. And if we look at the typical methods most guys follow, it's pretty clear to see why most guys have an average body, an average business, and they're just constantly anxious, scatterbrained, and not able to be present. So the typical methods are to track your macros and calories, to train 4, 5, 6 days a week, and use as many stimulants and supplements as you can just to fucking power through your work and your life. And now the big craze is all about these GLP-1s like Ozempic and retatrutide. And whilst these can get results in the short term, they often don't actually get lasting results and can actually produce worse health outcomes in the long run. So what should you do instead? Well, you actually need to rewire your mind for what is needed to produce better results with building a new body or reaching higher revenue targets or losing fat. And it all comes down to just one thing. And that one thing is how capable and efficient your body is at producing energy. And if you've been working away for the past 10, 15, 20 years on your body or on your business, you probably expect to be seeing them, top upper echelon results by now. But for most guys, they're still just seeing these mid results and just nowhere near what they know they're capable of, and still have so much more potential that they can reach. And this is exactly where I was about 4 years ago. So around May 2022, my life was pretty successful by society standards. I was training away in the gym and built an okay body. I was a qualified engineer, so I was going to go, strive and work up the corporate ladder. And I was just, on that trajectory to have, a pretty quote unquote decent life. But the truth was, I had pretty crippling anxiety. I also was drinking a shit ton, and I basically looked like a fucking spud. And so I had to make some big changes, but with just under 10 months later, I'd pretty much changed the complete trajectory of my life. So I'm going to walk you through this exact system to follow so you can get the same results. So let's go jump over to the laptop. All right, so how to change your life in 6 to 12 months. So on the left, you can see here exactly where I was. So this was around May 2022. And at this time, I'd wanted to make some changes for quite a while, which I'll get into further down. But the main point here was seeing this physique, seeing exactly what I looked like in a photo and just thinking, what the fuck have I done? I wouldn't say I'm fat, like the picture didn't do me justice, but I'm definitely holding a good 10 kilos too much. And even in the face, you can see how much puffiness is around the cheeks. I'm holding weight in the neck. Even my shirt's like tight to my neck here. I was just really underslept. I was bloated. I was super stressed out. And this was actually just a couple of months after failing my dissertation and some other sort of life situation, which had just left me feeling pretty depressed. So I think you can even see in the eyes, I wasn't really even happy to be just fucking, I wouldn't say alive, but I just wasn't happy. And this was the moment where I decided, like, I need to do something. So fast forward May, June, July, August is when I got to this physique. And as you can see, I've pretty much made like I'm not sure exactly what it was, but something like a good 15 kilogram weight loss. And this was July. This was the physique right before I went on holiday. So I obviously had 3 months. This might have even been April. I remember I had 3 months to pretty much change my life in terms of physique. And yeah, I just remember really having to think, I can't go on like this. I need to stop with all my bullshit. I need to do things different. And the thing is here, it's not like I wasn't training or I wasn't looking after myself. I was probably tracking macros at this time and probably training either 5 or 6 days a week. So I was in a bit of a powerlifting phase as well, which is probably why I held the extra mass. But I just remember thinking, this isn't the person I want to be. And I pretty much, just went pure weight loss during this time. There was a lot of other steps that were involved, which I'm going to go through in this video to get to here. But obviously I'm sort of a skinnier build. And then from this point is when I actually made the biggest change of my life, which was to quit alcohol for good. And then this went on to lead me to this physique in April 2023. So all in all, I guess this was roughly a 10 to 12 month transformation. So I'm just going to walk through each part of this sort of transformation. And this, again, isn't just about the physique. This is just a visual representation of what my body sort of showed from the inside to the outside. So I started drinking at age 13, and that's sort of what led me, not to this point, because I wouldn't say that drinking alone would cause you to turn to this sort of weight, but I was never really able to fully focus on getting healthy. I think that was something that I had missed for so many years. It was just, especially when you're younger or when you first start weight training, it's all just about counting macros and eating protein and just trying to put a bit of size on. So I was never able to keep consistent with things like nutrition, and my stress was higher, and this bled into a lot of my character. So I used alcohol a lot for suppressing my emotions. I was a very anxious person, so drink pretty much became a fast, integral part of my social life, and then more like a stress rebound. And I'd say from this age of 13 to 24, I pretty much just relied on alcohol for anything that, would be difficult to get through, which led to 10 years pretty much of anxiety, depression, and just degeneracy. So that's just sort of where I was at. So as I said, I started drinking at 13, and I wasn't 13 yet. I think I was actually 16. I just looked 13. But this is one of the earliest sort of baby face photos I could find. So around age 13, I was shy in school and took the most shit out of my friendship group. So I pretty much just was like the small, scrawny kid who didn't really speak up for themselves, didn't have, like, obviously any physical dominance or respect from anyone. So I just took a lot of shit. And this sort of led me to needing to seek that confidence and wanting to be able to be outspoken or to speak to women. And this led me to drinking so I could be, loud, I could talk to anyone, I could actually just stand up for myself a little bit more. And I was able to temporarily be someone else. So I wouldn't say disliked myself, but I think for a lot of people, when they rely on alcohol or drugs, they are trying to unlock a part of themselves that they aren't day to day. Hence why they want that state shift, because they want to become a better version of themselves temporarily, whether that's more outgoing, whether that's more confident, more endearing, or just whatever the reason is. So I pretty much became quickly accustomed to being able to, instead of putting the work in, I could just have a few beers and suddenly I would be able to snap into this different person. So from 13 to 25, I didn't really go a single week without drinking, because it was so much easier to just have a few drinks and be that guy, instead of having to do all the shadow work of the years of sort of what I thought anyway would be the long route. So I pretty much was just relying on this crutch. And then by about age 19, I'd started to become pretty depressed. So that's sort of where my childhood starting place came on. Like I feel weird calling my drinking era my childhood, but that's pretty much been from the UK. This was very normal. So then to the other side, so I would say I had two sides of me. So around 16, I actually decided to get in the gym and start focusing a bit on fitness and stuff. So I started at weight of 119 pounds. I remember sort of being, around probably high 55 to 60 kilograms and thinking, I need to get above 60 kg. So for that first year, it was just all out trying to just get a bit of mass on. So I was watching guys like Matt Ogus and the Hodge twins. These were sort of my early fitness inspirations. And I thought, the best way, which we all did, didn't we? We did the bro split, which was 5 to 6 days a week, where you do chest, then arms, and all just back to back in a row. And I found myself not feeling good and just pretty just drained all the time. So this wasn't just from drinking, this was sort of like in my day-to-day life as well. So between, this time to this time, which is when I became a personal trainer at 21, whilst still actually, as you can probably see the redness in my cheeks, was still a pretty heavy drinker, but sort of trying to transition into, a life of health and fitness and helping other people. I decided to get some tests done, because my day-to-day demeanor and my drive, my ambition, and mostly my sort of confidence and anxiety was just really sort of getting to me. And I didn't want to still have to keep using alcohol as my sort of crutch to just lean on. But I think from the years of drinking, this had slowly led me to not feeling good day to day. So this had really dropped my like baseline happiness. So I decided to get some tests done at 21 and found out I had low testosterone. So there's a lot of BS with clinics and the doctors now. So in the UK, the NHS is some of the worst cunts to even speak to about testosterone. You could have literally a women's level and they tell you you're fine. So I got my tests done, and I can't remember what exactly they were, because they were in British level, whereas most people we know sort of in nanograms per deciliter, but I would guess that they were around probably high 300s, which is about almost half of what you would want at 21. So I started looking for how to actually bring my energy back and how to have more drive, how to stop feeling sort of demotivated, and, you know, probably subtly looking for a replacement for the alcohol. So I started using a shitload of supplements. I'd spend probably 5-6 hours a day on Reddit and on Twitter looking at all these different testosterone boosters and learning the pathways. But after 8 years of consistent training and doing all this sort of supplements and everything, I just wasn't where I wanted to be. So I'm going to briefly go through here just my quick timeline just to show you. So this was me in 2014. So about age 16 here. So always with a drink in my hand, and this was sort of my 50 odd kgs build. Then by 2018, I'd sort of progressed from a child into somewhat of an average teenager or early adult. I think I will have been 19 here. And I'd started smoking a lot of devil's lettuce and doing stupid shit, just really being a degenerate at this point, as many of us did at 19. So yeah, this was probably my peak of my drinking years, my party years. I was never really, apart from this, I was never really a big drug user, which has, been one of my biggest blessings. But this was probably the peak of just not feeling good at all. And then down into 2022 is the point of where I decided that I couldn't do this anymore. So let's delete that. So that photo on the left there again was the moment where I actually decided I need to change my life. This was just probably a couple of months earlier. And then this was my final drink in July of that year in Ibiza. So here's what I was doing at the time. I was training 5-6 days a week. I was trying pretty much every single fad diet you could think of. So I did intermittent fasting for a while and carnivore. I think I'd maybe even started looking into sort of fasting and stuff in general. And I've become highly stressed. So back in this photo, when I said that I was going through a stressful period, I was sort of fucking about a lot and sort of had a lot of money in cryptocurrencies, and there was a lot of stress with work and uni. So I started trying to cut carbs because I'd seen how bloated that I was getting. I was using the testosterone boosters and getting 7 hours sleep, but none of it was quality. And I was waking up absolutely exhausted every day. So I used to sleep on my desk probably at about 10 a.m. after being awake for 2 hours. So I actually devised this plan where I bought some caffeine pills, and I would wake up. I would set my alarm half an hour to 40 minutes before I wanted to wake up. So I could take, I think, 3 caffeine pills, go back to sleep before they'd kicked in, and then I would wake up fully caffeinated and stimulated just so I could sort of get through the day. And I was unable to get off the alcohol. So I knew for a long time, probably over a year, that if I was going to change my life, that I would have to get off the drink. And then I hit my breaking point. So this was a few months before, in Halloween in 2021. I went out and had basically the worst night. It was a very good night, but I had probably the worst sort of moment of my life where I just thought, I can't go on like this. So I woke up next morning and lost my wallet. My jeans were absolutely covered in mud, and I had some morning clients for my personal training job and just completely missed every call. And I think I probably lost 2 out of my 4 clients that morning. So I thought, I can't go on like this. And I set out to spend pretty much the next 8 months trying to quit alcohol. And I caved every few weeks when something came up and stopped caring about my body. And that's when I started turning to binge eating. And whilst I was sort of drinking less, I was definitely eating more, but I was in that powerlifting phase, which comes up very quickly. And so from this point here is when I set out to make the change. So after about 5 months, this is where I got to. So this is a little bit after I'd stopped drinking, probably about July, August, September. So this is, probably 2 or 3 months after I'd stopped drinking, and you can see that I'd start to make some real progress in my physique. And then I carried on, and then this is pretty much the end of the transformation. I'm going to call that 12 months later. So this is in April, around April, May 2023, when I actually went solo traveling completely sober. So I went to Australia for about 6 weeks and then over to Thailand. So now I'm going to take you through the exact steps of how I made this change in 6 to 12 months, from going from this here to this in just under 12 months. Okay, so to start off, I believe in 7 facets of a great male life. So these are: energy is the number 1, and this leads to peace and happiness. And to do this, you need to get in check your health, your mental health, your body, and your hormones. So the system I'm going to show you is going to cover all 7 facets of this. Okay, so to start off with, we have first light movement. So most people will wake up, grab their phone, doom scroll, drink some caffeine, put on the news, play some music, get in the car, rush off to work. First light movement is about getting movement in at sunrise, waking up with the sun, and circadianizing your body. So the benefits of doing this are: it's a natural fat burner, it aligns your circadian rhythm, it's an instant mood lift and focus enhancer, you increase your hormone signaling, you will get a cellular energy boost instead of just more like the stimulants and supplements, which is what you want. You want energy from within, and you will get much better stress handling. So here you can see this was actually at sunrise at about 5:30 a.m. and just getting a nice walk in. The next point is what I call rest focus training. Okay, so most guys will live in the gym and they'll be there pretty much 5-6 days a week. With rest focus training, it's almost the opposite. It's about how many days did you rest per week. And I follow this simple system called the 2-day build system, which means 2 days a week you will be building, which is your training, and then you will go through the red zone and then the growth zone. So I've got another video here if you want to check that out. So when you go through rest focus training, you will rest a lot more than you're lifting, which means you will get jacked without having to live in the gym. You will get a much better life quality and enjoyment. It'll improve your training adhesion and how much you're sort of enjoying your training. You'll follow what I call the lion archetype, which means that you pounce on your mission, on your prey, which is your training, and then afterwards you'll rest for as long a duration as needed, which just means that you're not working like a mule where you never get to rest and recover. This will then lower your training stress on your body, which then reduces injuries and will eventually lead to increased muscle recovery and muscle growth. So this is a different way to train than pretty much anyone else does, but it was pretty much one of the biggest keys to changing my training up and actually letting my body, go from this point here down to these kind of physiques where I've really just nailed my sort of training and recovery. So the next point is alcohol abstention. So this entire process of you changing your life over 6 to 12 months will come down to if you can abstain from alcohol or not. If you want to do this whole thing, but you're not willing to just cut out some fucking substances, some poison pretty much, then you're not going to get anywhere, not just in your physique, but in life. I've seen too many guys just piss away unbelievable opportunities, whether that's with working up the ranks in their career, in their corporations, fucking up with relationships, or even just fucking their life by killing someone else or killing themselves. This will be the determining factor when you get to 80 years old and you look back at what you did in your life. If you got off alcohol, I can guarantee you will say, man, I had a fucking unbelievable life. I can't believe how far I took it. And if you don't, then you're just going to stay absolute average, middle of the pack, like every other guy you'll see down the boozer on a Friday night. So here's what you can expect when you quit alcohol. So firstly, this restores deep sleep, which is one of the most important things we actually do is sleep. You will reverse years of gut damage. So you can actually reverse damage to the gut once you stop drinking alcohol. It'll improve your hormonal balance, which is going to help so many things, but mainly you will see a leaner face and you'll start to see a visible jawline. So I've got a bit of a beard here, which you can't see, but I never had any sort of jawline, and now I started to get some sort of jaw going. You will notice a much better libido. So back in sort of 2022, this point, I had literally zero libido. I was on this Ibiza trip. I wasn't asked about a single woman. I just wanted to drink. So I had this is when I got my testosterone tests and they were in the 300s. I had literally zero libido and all I was doing is just getting battered. You will also notice a huge cognitive boost. So this, as a businessman, if you're focused on a career or entrepreneurship, one of the main things you've got is your actual cognition, your brain power. And I can't begin to describe just how big an impact drinking makes to your ability to focus, to be creative, to produce, and just to have sort of mental fortitude to keep going. It will also protect the liver and the mitochondria, and will give you a lower chance of organ failure in the kidneys and prevents fatty liver disease. So almost everyone who stays drinking when they get into their 60s will get some form of organ damage, whether the kidneys, whether the liver, whether high blood pressure, and even things like cancers are all highly increased by drinking. And then finally, it will reduce your baseline cortisol, which cortisol is one of the biggest killers of man. So here on the right is me around I think this was maybe on the day. This was 3 years of going sober. And yeah, this was probably one of my happiest sort of moments in life. 3 years. I think anything from now, I'm approaching 4 years, is just, it's the same. I think this was where I said I really fucking did it. So the next point is what I call cortisol realignment. And this is basically where you start helping your body not use stress so much and actually become a more peaceful, more grounded version of yourself. So I was always super stressed out before I started doing this, and this is what brought me to needing the caffeine pills, before I'd even woke up, because I could only function on high cortisol. I could only function with high stress, and being able to realign this just really helps you to control your body and start to just become a peaceful version of yourself, which is how you will be present around, whether it's work relations or, sort of social situations around women, etc. So you really need to focus on just starting to lower that cortisol baseline in your body. So I'm not talking about when you first wake up. I mean, for most people, they're walking around just with a constant sort of high stress level. So you will notice straight away you've probably got high shoulders right now. So there's no reason to just not drop them shoulders a little bit. And you'll notice as the video goes on again, you'll raise these shoulders. Why? Because you've got a high cortisol. So once you do this, you'll notice your reduced low-grade anxiety. So as I said, this is just almost your anxiety without you even noticing. This is what sort of gives you that little, shortness or not fully expanded sort of diaphragm. You'll notice you become a higher frequency person. So most people are just in a low frequency state all the time. They're not creative. They're not sort of fun to be around. They're not positive thinking. And they're just always in this scarcity mindset. It'll also improve your rest and digest system. So this is how well your body's able to actually digest food and go into a rest mode, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. So most guys, they never reach the parasympathetic nervous system. Most guys will never get into this because they're just too stressed out constantly. And when you're in this state, this pretty much means that you can't digest food properly, which means it's not going to actually be able to be utilized for nutrients, for muscle building, for growth, for recovery. And, where else is this going to go? It's going to turn to fat cells. This also going to hurt your gut axis, which also comes from having high inflammation. So when you get into more of a low cortisol state, you will notice that you will lower your inflammation, which you will not only see on the outside of your body, but also on the inside of your body, which is super important for just natural digestion. You'll improve your gut microbiome. So this is a huge one for why most people feel stress. And it's a bit of a dichotomy where high stress will ruin your gut microbiome, and then having a poor gut will actually make you more stressed. So the easiest way is just to start lowering that cortisol and just sort of taking things out of your life that are causing that stress. This will then cause increased fat burning. It will reduce limbic-driven impulses, which is basically cravings. You'll get a much clearer focus and not feel like I said, the scatterbrained sort of, jittery kind of focus. And then this will actually help to so many sort of longevity symptoms that most people get of premature aging. So you will notice better skin, better tissue, and your organs will have much better sort of longevity there. And I think skin is where it shows for most people. So if anyone's got sort of stretched skin, or they've got a lot of acne or pimples, this is almost always from high cortisol. So the next point is sleep architecture. So your sleep, as I said, is pretty much the foundation of everything. So most people will, scroll till late in bed. They'll have full brightness and just, this is actually feeding back into the cortisol by not sleeping well. Because not only are you stimulating cortisol at night when you actually want more of the melatonin, which the two basically can't coexist at the same time. When you then have a shitty night's sleep, you will then become more stressed out. So once you start fixing your sleep, these are what you'll notice. So I put light environments here. So one of the most important things you can do to start fixing your sleep is just to literally, on a morning when you wake up, get as much natural light into the eyes, into the retinas, soon as you wake up as possible. But then on a night, you want as little light getting in you as possible. You want to go fucking pure hibernation bat mode. So this will mean that you want to turn all the lights out and just have a nice low tungsten sort of coloration lamp if you need anything. This means you don't want your full screen brightness. And you just want to really just make sure that you mimic and rise and fall with the sun. So once you do this and get your sleep architecture in place, you'll notice increased resilience. So this was a huge one for why most people just don't feel good sort of day to day, because they haven't got that sort of, when you're low on sleep, you will really just sort of not have any sort of combat to keep going. you'll notice much better sort of brain focus, which will clear up brain fog. So a lot of people are constantly just not able to communicate their thoughts. They're not able to verbalize. They're not able to get into a flow state and really focus on things. This will also massively help your testosterone production. So pretty much, I would say, no one really knows, but 78 to 80% of testosterone production occurs in the night. So if you're just not getting into proper good deep sleep, or if you're waking up constantly, then your hormones are just not going to be able to produce, and sort of, because your body needs to produce every single night. It gets that signal in every single day. The next is the anti-aging effects. So I think everyone is pretty much aware that, if you sleep better, then you will be much healthier, you'll live a longer, better life, blah, blah, blah. But how does it do this? Well, it supports mitochondrial repair, which is your body's sort of cellular energy, which is how your body does anything. This is how your brain works and operates, which takes up actually so many calories just to let your brain function. So if you're getting poor sleep, you're literally not going to be like letting your brain recover. So this will lower your brain inflammation as well. It'll improve your cognition, your memory, and just your consistent sort of energy physically and mentally. So this one is absolutely huge. The next one is what I call hormone restoration. So this is probably the reason why 95% of men feel shit. It's because they have trash hormones. And this isn't because of really anything we've done. This is just living in, the 21st century. You've just got, let's just say you've got zero chance really of having high testosterone without actually having a proper system in place. This is due to microplastics. This is due to trash food. This is due to comfort. This is a cascade of so many things that we've found ourselves with pretty much an epidemic of low testosterone men. So once you restore your hormones, here's what you'll notice. You will get a much sharper intuition and better reflexes. So this goes from your training to driving to pretty much, just being able to be a more like switched on kind of person. You'll absolutely skyrocket your libido. So I can guarantee that if you're sort of feeling low libido right now, then you've probably got either low testosterone, you've got high estrogen, or you've got some sort of different hormonal imbalance. You'll start to notice that effort feels pleasurable again. So back in 2022, I actually was trying to make YouTube videos, which I'm not going to put on the screen, but I just couldn't think of anything else worse than actually having to exceed myself and, exert effort. Now I notice that effort sort of feels pleasurable. I actually look forward to putting in effort, putting in work. It will give you much higher assertiveness and, just a tint of optimism, just a real backing of yourself of, I fucking can do this. And this actually leads into as well a hormone not often talked about, which is DHT, which is basically the point of hormones that really controls like your hair. So you might have heard that things like creatine, etc., would give people hair loss. This is because of DHT. So the next thing is you will notice a much faster recovery. So this is from training to just day-to-day life to stress after work and being able to go again tomorrow. So your hormones very much dictate with your sleep how fast you can sort of recover and go again. This will then lead to increased muscle mass. So here is sort of where I ended up at maybe I think this was last year. I'd never been able to sort of unlock this sort of level of anabolism before. And this really came from just improving my hormones. You notice better erection quality. You'll notice reduced puffiness in the face, in the body, just literally everywhere around you. So you will start to get that angular face and start to look a lot less sort of estrogenized, feminized. You will start to be able to target more stubborn body fat. So one of the only ways to actually, sniper the specific body fat is by doing things like increased hormones, lowering your cortisol. You will start to be able to target more of sort of the visible fat layers, especially where your body likes to store it. So when you increase testosterone in the body, you'll just get a much more like defined aesthetic physique. And then this will lead to better vitality and extend how long you're in them prime years for. Let me just look at this one more time. Yeah, so the next one is what I call metabolic priming. So this is how you work around your nutrition to work with your body, with your training, with your recovery, with whatever you're doing. So as I showed earlier, the method that I follow is this 2-day build system. So metabolic priming actually works to focus the build zone around where I give myself the most of the nutritional sort of energy. This is going to be for high performance, high output. And then once you come into sort of the rest and digest and regrowth phase is when you sort of give your metabolism a rest, which is going to actually increase metabolism because you're not stuck there sort of needing empty calories when you're trying to train, and you're not stuffing your face when you're just going to be sort of sat there watching Netflix all night. So once you start metabolic priming, here's what you'll notice. So the first thing is you'll start to pulverize fat. So this is one of the biggest things I noticed, is that I would spend weeks or months trying to lose fat, and sometimes the scale would go down, but my physique would sort of look the same. The next thing is better morning focus. So actually giving your body the more heavy digestion foods and, the sort of power carbohydrates and things around the training when you need it will actually free up so much of your mental bandwidth and give you just sort of like fast, sharp energy on a morning for, your focus, for your work, or just, generally not feeling sluggish on a morning. The next is that you will increase NEAT, which is basically, I've been throwing my arms about all this fucking video. And that's because I've just got so much sort of like NEAT energy to expend, which is going to be all the sort of like the extra movements in your body. You will actually negate afternoon crashes, which was probably one of the biggest game changers I've been able to unlock. So right now it's 5:30 and I feel literally as switched on as I did at 8 o'clock this morning. So, this stuff works. The next is you will get an actual non-jitter energy. You'll start to train a lot better and actually have endurance for the training session, not get to, the fourth exercise and sort of feel like you've fully just spent yourself. It will make diet adherence so much easier. You'll increase your recovery again. You'll get a much better nutrient uptake, which means your body can actually utilize the nutrients in the body a lot more and start to sort of give your body what it needs rather than just sort of throw in a shitload of breads and pastas and everything at it, which will then, again, help to upregulate your metabolism and just give you a general much higher sort of energy to output, but also let you rest a lot easier. So here's like a typical breakfast, which is just fucking banging. And then finally is dopamine regulation. So this sort of links in with cortisol, but this is probably the biggest problem we've got in 2026 is just absolutely fucked up dopamine. So the most obvious thing is the phone. Most people are just absolutely glued to the phone. They're glued to TikToks. They've got fucking absolute TikTok brain. They can't focus for more than 1 or 2 seconds. And if you're at this point in the video, then you probably have much better dopamine than 95% of people in the world, because it takes a lot to sit through a guy rambling for half an hour on some health stats. Okay, so once you fix your dopamine, you'll get a much more clear and just more visible sort of thoughts. They will come to your mind a lot easier. You'll not feel so like fogged up. Your business and life will start to feel more exciting instead of just always sort of not feeling enjoyment and wanting to sit and doom scroll. You actually lower your need for stimulants, which is a huge improvement on your life if you can get to the point where you don't need caffeine. I can tell you, like, for my stress levels and my dopamine, this has been one of the biggest improvements of just getting off caffeine. You'll also get a much higher drive, so you won't feel sort of after, 5 minutes of just wanting to sort of stop working or pick up your phone. You'll notice much more enhanced creativity and get better introspection and being able to sort of, not be so just stressed out in your head where you're thinking about all the worst situations. You'll be able to zoom out and actually analyze your life a bit more. You'll get a much better increased productivity and focus, which comes from getting a much smoother flow state. And I say smoother because you will be able to just get into this flow state sort of, on call whenever you need and not feel like you're literally fighting to stay focused for fucking 15 minutes. And then this will actually give you much better conversations and connections with people because you're not just absolutely dopamine depleted and feel like just a fucking flump to talk to. And then here is sort of a nice view of me sort of resetting my dopamine. So what's required to make this change in the next 6 to 12 months? Well, the reason most men fail is because they don't know their why. This is the most important part of changing your life because motivation is not only unreliable, it's not useful. When we rely on motivation, this means you're doing something only when you want to do it. But changing your life in under 12 months will be more than just 50% of the days when you actually don't really want to do it. So here's where to start to find your why. So firstly, I want you to identify what you have going on in your life right now. So what I mean is, like, what is the main thing that you're wanting to fix, to improve, that you want to really dedicate yourself to? And there's probably just one area that comes to mind. So it could be earning more money, it could be saving or improving your health, it could be spending more time with your family, becoming a more happier and less stressed person. It could be building your body. It could be having a more exciting and interesting life, or just actually, being more of a good person and helping someone else, which, is all good reasons. So whatever resonates with you, I want you to just focus on that one thing. So in 2022, for me, it was saving my health. Now, I wasn't going to die. I was only 24, but I seen the pathway that I was going towards. And I knew that would be the sort of make or break moment, whether my trajectory went like this or like this. And I knew if I didn't fix it, I would be looking at a life of alcoholism. So what scared me about that was ending up like, my past family, who've just pretty much ended up being heavy drinkers and never even reached a life close to what they actually was capable of. So that was my why, and through that time, it kept me focused every day. And you need to find exactly what yours is and just obsess over it. And I'm going to leave you with some action steps for today. So the first one is to get morning sunlight every morning ASAP. So I don't care if you just want to go sit at your back door and just get some sunlight in the eyes. First thing every morning. Second, I want you to start trying to substitute just at-home drinking. So when you just get home from work and you just pour a glass of wine, I just want you to just replace that with it, whether it's a drink, whether it's just a walk, whether it's just not drinking at all because it's out of habit, and just really start to try not just reaching for the alcohol, because every day that you do this, you're just reinstating that you're someone who needs to rely on alcohol just for the littlest, mundane days. The third is I want you to start limiting your training to just 2 or 3 days per week. So here, I only train for 2 days a week, and I'm able to build a much better physique now than I could training 5 or 6 days. The next is to just not touch your phone for the first hour every single day. So this is just going to really help you regulate your dopamine. It's going to lower your stress. Oh my God, your cortisol is going to be half of what it was. As soon as this is going to be the hardest one as well. As soon as you feel yourself reaching for the phone, if you just block that 2 or 3 times, even if you have to turn it off or put full lockdown mode on, I don't care. This will be one of the biggest changes that you make for your entire sort of well-being. The next is to cut out processed food. So a lot of processed food is the reason that we've got such low testosterone and, poor hormonal balance in the 21st century. The next will just be to take trips in nature. So just taking, whether it's afternoons or even Sundays, just to sort of be outside again and not be stuck, sat at the sofa watching Netflix all day. And then the last thing is just start focusing on your gut health and just focusing on food and nutrition that's not going to fuck up your gut and actually start to heal your gut from the inside, which pretty much is going to help you in every other area of your life, even in your sort of your brain, your cognition, in your work, in your sort of stress levels, everything. So if you want to actually change your life over the next 6 to 12 months, you need to be crystal clear on your plan. If you want to work with me personally to do so, you can come join the Lifestyle Athlete Beta Cohort, which we kick off on the 1st. There'll only be 10 spots available, so if you want to check that out, just click the first link in the description. So that's what I do to change my life over the next 6 to 12 months. But where should you even start? Well, watch this video here where I'll show you exactly how to set up your life to work around a busy work schedule and put this whole system on easy mode.